Do you feel like by narrowing down the target audience into people that are smaller businesses, people that might be looking for QuickBooks services, not trying to focus on the entire world all at once, does that help you with SEO in terms of figuring out what keywords to look for or what the search volume is going to be or how to pull in like a higher converting traffic through the way that you optimize the websites, like anything like that?
Right. Yeah. So let me share my screen and I'll show you some numbers. I sent that request to you.
There you
So
go.
what we're looking at is, so going back to the website, I tried that QuickBooks angle, and from an SEO angle, it doesn't really resonate. People tend to not be really specific when they're searching for things. And so we can look at some numbers right now. If we go back over to, let me pull up some bookkeeping references here. So what I'm trying to do is like the three things that I'm looking at, like they don't provide CPA services. They're more of a bookkeeping kind of a service. So I'm going to be looking at something like this: bookkeeping services. You're at $12K a month, and then bookkeepers near me, like those kinds of things are what people are looking for. Maybe you have somebody who doesn't understand the difference between a CPA and an accountant and bookkeeping services. Maybe you might get some people, but from the SEO angle, I'm just laser focused on bookkeeping services and bookkeepers near me. I went the QuickBooks route, and there's just the search volume really isn't there. So for me, and from the data that I'm looking at just from SEO, the QuickBooks piece might resonate with people who are on the site. But if we're just trying to rank on Google, that's what I'm looking for, are things like bookkeeping services and the bookkeepers near me. So that's where I'm gravitating first. Like that's kind of thought number one.
Okay, let me tag on that real quick. And so based on what you just said, then I would then take your information and I would go and update the landing page that we just talked about. And so instead of saying QuickBooks services at the top, I would say bookkeeping services at the top. And then instead of is bookkeeping really the best use of your time, I would say is using QuickBooks really the best use of your time? So that the main H1 would be the bookkeeping service. And this is so crazy. Like, I don't know how web designers today get by without access to your genius. Like, if I didn't have access to you, I would be optimizing the website for QuickBooks, thinking that people would search for that just because it seems like maybe that's what I might do. When you can actually look at the stats and say, hey, you really ought to invert those two things, which is like if anybody wants access to this knowledge, jump in, schedule a call with Gabe, and just let him help you with this. So like as part of DoubleStack, you have access to Robin's genius, Gabe's genius. You work with me every day in the DoubleStack dashboard and everything. And you get this unfair advantage over like the solo web designer just trying to make things work on their own. So that's how I would flip the homepage based on that research. So anyway, that's all. That was my interruption. Back to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then the location piece, like, so because he's in Fayetteville, and he offers his services everywhere. I mean, he has a domain authority of a 0, which is pretty normal for a small business. So from an off-page standpoint, he's not going to rank for, unless he really niches down into a specific kind of offering, even then we'd have to make sure that the keyword volume is there. So like bookkeeping for nonprofits, for instance, that would be something that I would do a deeper dive into for keywords and say, okay, is anybody looking for that? Maybe they're not. And a lot of times, some of those ideas lead to another idea, or maybe that is a good idea, or sometimes it's just a bad idea. Like you look at the data and you say, well, nobody's really searching for that. So they are a nonprofit. They're just, it's like, like just how culture, we're not aware of how culture affects us because we're in an American culture. In the same way, like if somebody's looking for nonprofit bookkeeping services, they're not thinking that much. Like they're not thinking, I'm looking for a nonprofit bookkeeping service. They're just looking for a bookkeeping service. They're not really thinking about the fact that they are a nonprofit unless it provides a different kind of problem that another, like just kind of for-profit business wouldn't have.
Well,
they might look for affordable bookkeeping services usually with nonprofits. That's kind of, I've been on some boards, man,
Oh, yes.
That's usually what they're hunting for. Yeah.
Absolutely. So then the one of the opportunities for them is the location-based piece. So I know that they will work with anybody, but he's talked about they're in Fayetteville and they offer local and 100% online. And then down here, he mentions serving all of Georgia. And so it was in the footer. So serving clients in Georgia and nationwide. So it's always nice to mention that you're serving clients nationwide. And so I wouldn't take that out. But if I'm focused on how are we going to rank them in Google to get them to show up for people who are looking for their services, then I'm gonna really kind of niche down locally, and then I'm gonna look at Fayetteville, and I'm gonna look at McDonough is right there. They're right outside Atlanta, so I look at Atlanta, and they can't rank in Atlanta right now. They could maybe in a year, if we were doing ongoing work with them, maybe a year or two, depending on the speed of the package. But for Fayetteville and McDonough, I mean, like you come through here and the people who are ranking in Fayetteville for bookkeeping services, you have a domain authority of a 0.3, a 0.2, a 0.1, a 1. So I look at that and a 0. So they're actually on the first page. They're 7th in Fayetteville. So that's awesome that they show up. I want to get them in the top 3. And that comes with just doing some off-page work and some on-page work to get that domain authority up to, even if they had a domain authority of a 3, right? And this is where you have to compare who's ranking on the SERPs that you want to show up for. Because if they had a domain authority of a 3, which is really small, they could show up even higher in Fayetteville. And then McDonough is the same thing. I mean, it's a bunch of 0s and 1s. And so they could show up in the top 3 eventually in McDonough as well. And then Atlanta, again, a little tougher, but I think at some point they could show up there. And that Atlanta just opens up the door to so many businesses that might be looking for those bookkeeping services. And because they're local to Atlanta, that's already going to create that trust. It's like, oh, there's somebody right here, then I'll reach out to them. So it doesn't feel like somebody far off. Unless they niche down into a certain kind of bookkeeping service, they're going to have to, from an SEO angle, they're going to have to niche down to their location and start there first, and then they can expand from there. So that was kind of my number 2 thought, was the location, like really focusing on the location. And then practically what that looks like would be they're building out their homepage. We're optimizing that. Right now it's a 1-pager, which is great. I mean, you can rank with a 1-pager because they're ranking right now in Fayetteville with a 1-page site. To then expand that, then we're building out and optimizing the homepage. I want to see more copy on there. I want to see all that optimized for bookkeeping services and bookkeepers, and then building out the about page. I want to know who they are. I want, like what you said, I want to see his face. I want to know what kind of credentials he has. Why should we work with him? And then building out those service pages. So building out services specifically about, right now it just goes to, just to an anchor text right here. So it goes to services, and like, even this is a bit vague, and I think it's a bit vague for Google. Like, Google doesn't really understand the services that he's offering right now, because the subheads are routine functions and occasional functions. So like, I see what he's trying to do, but I want to see specific, like, we offer bookkeeping services and we offer end of year bookkeeping, and just a few kind of services that they would offer, that we could build out some content around that. And then, then you're doing off-page work. I don't see his address in here. That's going to help Google understand where they're located more than just located in Fayetteville, Georgia. And then potentially focus on those cities. So building out some pages to show Google that they service people in Atlanta, and they service businesses in McDonough, and they service businesses in Fayetteville. So those are the practical things that I would do to roll out that site and to get them showing up in their local area first so that they can expand from there.
When you said that you didn't think they could rank in Atlanta yet, what made you think that?
Good question. So I'm just looking at, just as a off the cuff, I'm looking at domain authorities. So you go from a whole bunch of zeros. I think of it like a varsity and a JV team, like cross country. The JV, they're just going to be slower, and the varsity are going to be faster. So if we're just looking at off page, which is all of the sites that are linking back over to your site, if we're just looking at off page, nobody's doing that well in Fayetteville, Georgia. So if we're kind of sticking Justin on a team right now, I would put him in the JV team for ranking, and the JV team is ranking in Fayetteville and McDonough right now. So just from off-page numbers, I see a lot of zeros and ones. Then I go to Atlanta, and now we're getting into the varsity team, where the first guy that ranks is a 12, and we have a 50 and 20 and 4. There is a 0. But my guess is they're right there. They're located in Atlanta, and so that's going to help them rank there. And then a 4 and a 50 and a 21. So it's just a different landscape. So it'd be like sticking a freshman on the varsity team, and he just doesn't run well because everybody's faster. So that's what I'm looking at there. So it's doable. It just doesn't happen. So the way that I would break down a couple packages, depending on their budget, would say, let's do a small package. If we do a small package, then we can work on your Fayetteville and McDonough. So we can work on those rankings, and we can see movement there. If you want to go up to a large package, then we can take on Atlanta and really do some work there, so that eventually at a large package level, you could go even faster, but at a large package level, you probably could get them ranking in 6 to 9 months in Atlanta, where they're showing up on the first page, just from what I'm seeing right here. So it's doable. They need to run faster than they would need to run for Fayetteville and McDonough.
Yeah, that makes sense. It could be the case if it's just this one person, you might not be able to handle that much heat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's too much growth too fast. So maybe for his budget, and maybe for the amount of clients that he wants to bring in right now, he just focuses on a small package, and we get him ranking in the top 5 and then the top 3. I mean, that would be a great action item for these guys.